y'all, Dixie here. Today I want to talk to you about why I switched from Salomon trail runners to Altra trail runners during my Pacific Crest Trail through hike. So actually when I started my first through hike on the Appalachian Trail, I started with just boots, like your typical leather hiking boot, and realized that wasn't going to work for me. So I found the world of trail runners, and the first one I tried was a Salomon, and they ended up working for me the whole AT. And so I kind of had the mentality of, if it's not broke, don't fix it. So likely I would have stuck with Salomons if I hadn't had any issues. But during my first couple of days on the PCT, I realized that although I started with the same size trail runner that I finished the AT on, I guess my feet had flattened out even more and I needed a bigger size. So the smaller Salomons were causing my toes to hit the front of the shoe, which bruised my toenails and ended up causing me to have blisters up under my toenails, and my toenails later fell off. So when I got to Mount Laguna, which was the first outfitter, first place to really get a pair of trail runners, I had intended on just stepping up a size in Salomons, but it turned out that they didn't have the size that I needed in Salomons. So I was pretty nervous because, I mean, your feet are kind of a big deal when it comes to a through hike. I mean, you need them to be in good shape, and so I was just worried that going with a completely different brand would cause my foot issues that, you know, I hadn't had before. One of the biggest features that made me sold on trying the Altra brand was the wider toe box. So I knew that my toes that were cramped up in a small shoe would have the ability to kind of spread out and to heal, because they were really sore from, you know, hitting the front of that toe box in the Salomons. And I mean, if you think about it, you know, it's obviously going to be better for your feet, and you're going to be like stronger in the foot when your toes are more spread out naturally where they're supposed to be, and you know, you get more of like a grounded walk versus walking like with little, you know, ball feet. So the first model of the Altras that I tried out was the Lone Peak 2.5, and these actually have a wider toe box than some of the other models I wore. And then they also told me about the zero drop in the shoe, and I didn't know what that meant. I just needed some shoes that would work, that, you know, would give my toes some space, and they recommended those. So I was like, okay, zero drop, whatever, sounds great. What I later found out is that zero drop means that the space between your heel and the ground, and then the ball of your foot and the ground, are the same distance, unlike a lot of tennis shoes or running shoes or trail runners that have a drop from the heel to the ball of the foot, and a lot of them are like 12 millimeters. As I did more research, I found out that one of the founders of Altra was working at his dad's shoe shop, and he would see a lot of people coming in getting shoes for running, and they were having all sorts of different foot problems, whether it was like plantar fasciitis or whatever. And he decided that it was probably, you know, the drop in the shoe, the way that the shoe was designed, and the way it caused like an unnatural gait. So he was actually cutting out that little wedge and like using a toaster oven, putting the shoe back together, and it was really cool, the story behind it. But anyway, he found that when he did that, a lot of these runners suddenly didn't have the same problems anymore. And apparently that's when the idea for the zero drop and, you know, the whole idea behind Altras was created. Now, they do say a lot of times it takes people a little while to get used to the zero drop in their shoes, and that the best idea is to rotate them out with your normal running shoe or whatever you're used to. That way you get used to the zero drop. Because like a spring, instead of your foot, you know, going up like that, it's really going down more, and then, you know, able to pop back up with a little more power. So it makes sense why your calves might feel a little sore while you're adjusting to that change. And if you look up on their website, they go into more details of, you know, why this whole design is better and more natural for your feet and all that. Not really going to go into that today, because honestly that's not the reason that I swapped. It's just a benefit that I received from swapping. I don't recall noticing any calf soreness when I started using Altras. There may be a couple of reasons for that. One, my feet and my legs and everything were already sore because, you know, I was starting a through hike. And also I put in my inserts that I use Dr. Scholl's for plantar fasciitis, so I did have a little more arch support in there than comes with the factory insole in the Altras. Now, I was at an outfitter one time after using the Altras with my Dr. Scholl's inserts for a while, and I heard an outfitter tell a guy that if he went to Altras that he would have to use a certain insole if he didn't use the factory ones, because, you know, you couldn't just use any insole that because of the zero drop that would cause you issues. And so I looked up on Altra's website on the FAQ, and it mentions, you know, can I use orthotics or other inserts? Altra says yes, you actually can use inserts or orthotics in our shoes, but I guess the idea is that eventually your foot should adjust to the zero drop and you might not even need those orthotics or inserts. Of course, it depends on your own foot, because I mean everybody's feet are different, but the idea is that eventually you can just get rid of that altogether. For me personally, plantar fasciitis is not fun. I had a bout of that on the AT. I think a lot of it was not swapping my shoes often enough, so I switch out my trail runners every 500 miles. All of the pairs of Altras that I used would have lasted me over 500 miles as far as like wear and tear and the tread, but I just found for myself that I feel like, you know, after every 500 miles or so, just the support is gone, the cushioning, or whatever the science is behind it. So after 500 miles on my Lone Peak 2.5s, I went to an outfitter to get new shoes. They didn't have any 2.5s because that was the older version, so I ended up with the Altra Lone Peak 3.0. I actually think I had like 2 or 3 pair of those during the rest of my hike. The main difference that I noticed personally between the 2.5s and the 3.0s, there are several things, but the biggest difference that I immediately noticed was the toe box was a little bit narrower, but again, wider than any of the pairs of Salomons I ever had. Then I also ended up with a pair of Altra Torin 2.5s, and those aren't necessarily trail running shoes. I think they're more just like a straight running shoe. And it was pretty obvious from the tread that was the case. They worked out fine, and I ended up wearing them also, I think, about 500 miles. And I don't recall, you know, slipping a lot more or anything like that, but obviously, you know, on some loose gravel and maybe wet surfaces, they might not have been as aggressive of a tread, and the other pair might have served me better. Now, the 2.5s and even the Torins really looked like clown shoes. I mean, the wider toe box is definitely not fashionable, but out on the trail it's more about function over fashion. If I had to pick one though, I would probably go with the Lone Peak 3.0s. There really is no particular reason that I went with the men's shoes. I would have tried on some of the women's Altras, but all of the outfitters that I went to, they didn't have one big enough for my foot in stock. For the CDT, I plan on sticking with Altras. I already actually have a pair of the 3.5s. I feel comfortable enough and have enough faith in the Altra brand to, you know, try the different styles. And that's the newest one out, so I assume that they've probably, you know, made corrections from things that people complained about previously. But regardless, I'm gonna give them a shot. I'll let y'all know what I think. So that's my experience with Altras. I would love to hear what y'all have to say about them, you know, if they've helped different foot problems you have, or if they didn't work for you and why you think so. And then also, if anybody has like test the limits of Altras as far as like durability and tread and how long it took to wear them out, because like I said, I always swap mine at 500 miles, so I don't really know. But if you have any questions about my experience with them, please feel free to share that in the comments below, and I will answer those for you. And thank y'all so much for watching. If you find this channel helpful at all, the easiest way to support my work and what I do here is to visit dixieaz.com next time you go to do shopping on Amazon. All it does is give you a link that redirects you to Amazon at no additional cost to you. You'll be supporting this channel. Thank you so much, and we will see y'all next time.